Hi guys, welcome to a new video here where we are going to be configuring port security. So this lab, we are going to be learning how to configure port security on switch 1 and restrict the MAC address for a particular interface to only allow the MAC address of PC1. So let's get straight into the lab. First part of this lab here is to shut down the range of interfaces from Fast Ethernet 0/3 to 0/12. So if we go into switch 1 and now we specify the interface range from Fast Ethernet 0/3 to 12, and now we enter shutdown, that will change the status to administratively down. So show IP interface brief. Now this will show us that from Fast Ethernet 0/3 to 12, all these interfaces have been changed to administratively down status. So if we now go to part 2, we need to configure the Fast Ethernet 0/2 port to allow connections from only end devices. What kind of attack does this configuration prevent? So what we need to do here is we need to configure Fast Ethernet 0/2 as an access port. So interface Fast Ethernet 0/2, and now switch port mode access. We'll configure this as an access port. Now this will prevent the port Fast Ethernet 0/2 from becoming a trunk port, and that prevents us unnecessarily expanding the LAN. So if we look at the answer here, switch port mode access configures as an access port. By manually configuring the Fast Ethernet 0/2 port as an access port, you can prevent the port from becoming a trunk port if a rogue switch connects to the port. Therefore, you can prevent the LAN from being expanded beyond the boundary of switch 1. Now, on PC1, issue the ipconfig/all command. What MAC address is associated with PC1's network interface card? So let's go into PC1 now, and we type in ipconfig/all. This will show us here. Now the MAC address is named here, the physical address. So just remember that the MAC address can go by several names, can go by hardware address, physical address, burnt-in address, but they're all referring to the MAC address. So here 000C79882251 is the MAC address for PC1. So what we need to do now is we need to take that, and part 4, on switch 1, configure port security on the Fast Ethernet 0/2 port to allow connection from PC1's MAC address. Now use a single command. After you issue this command, is port security enabled on the port? So we need to configure port security on Fast Ethernet 0/2 to only allow a connection from PC1's MAC. So let's go back into switch 1. Now if we go back into interface Fast Ethernet 0/2, now we configure switch port that's security, MAC address, and we paste in the MAC address for PC1. That there has entered the command. However, is port security is that actually is that configured? Is it configured? That's the question. Is port security enabled on the port? Sorry, is it enabled? It isn't actually. It isn't yet. It isn't enabled yet on the port until we do something else, which will be at a later stage. So whilst we have entered this command, it's not actually enabled port security for that interface yet. So that will come at a later stage where we will do this. So let's just check the answer though for this. So on switch 1, you should issue the following command to configure port security on the fast Ethernet 0/2 port to allow connection from PC1's MAC address. Switch port security MAC address 000C79882251. Now, although you've issued a switch port security command, port security is not yet enabled on the fast Ethernet 0/2 port. You should configure any non-default port security values before you enable port security on a port. Otherwise, port security will dynamically learn the MAC address of any device that is already connected to the port and assume that it is a permitted MAC address. So let's move on to part 5. On switch 1, configure port security on the fast Ethernet 0/2 port to allow a maximum of one MAC address to connect to the port. A maximum of one MAC address to connect to the port. So what do we need to do here? Let's go back into switch 1. Now we need to do switch port security maximum 1. Now what you need to remember here is, by default, if you don't configure if you've not configured a port for port security, the maximum number of MAC addresses that will allow will be 1. So this command is not necessarily it's not actually necessary. However, just for demonstration purposes, we are being asked to, for learning purposes, this lab asks us to do, but it will explain that whilst yes, you've entered the command, it's important to know that one MAC address is also the default value. Therefore, it's not necessary to explicitly configure this command. How the switch port security maximum command configure port security to allow more than one MAC address to connect to the interface. So this wasn't necessarily what we've done. But if we wanted to change this value, this is how we'd do it. We'd just we'd just change 1, 2, 2, or 3, or however many MAC addresses we want to configure. It's just important to know that this should only be as much MAC addresses that are required. Okay, now part 6. On switch 1, configure port security on the fast Ethernet 0/2 port to discard the traffic, log the unauthorized entry attempt, increment the security violation counter, and place the port into error disabled state. Use single command. So let's go back to switch 1. Now let's go back to switch 1, and we don't need to actually exit the interface. We stay in the interface. But what we are going to do here is switch port the security violation shutdown. So now we have told the switch that if an unauthorized MAC address tries to access the network through fast Ethernet 0/2, then shut down the port. So that's what we've told switch 1 here. So let's just check the answer. On switch 1, you should issue the following command to configure port security on the fast Ethernet 0/2 port to discard the traffic, log the unauthorized entry attempt, increment the security violation counter, and place the port into a disabled state. Switch port security violation shutdown. Now, to configure the action that a switch will perform when unauthorized traffic is received on the switch port, you should issue the switch port security violation protect restrict shutdown command in interface configuration mode. By default, a switch port with port security enabled will be configured for shutdown. Therefore, issuing the switch port security violation shutdown command is not strictly necessary on a port that has not been previously configured with port security. To enable an interface that is in the errors disabled state, you must manually issue the shutdown command followed by the no shutdown command unless you have configured automatic error disable recovery by issuing the error disabled recovery interval command. Okay, so if you got a port interface that's in error disabled state, you issue shutdown command followed by the no shutdown command to recover that port, to re-enable it. So now part 7 on switch 1, enable port security on the fast Ethernet 0/2 port. What would happen now if you disconnected PC1 from the port and connected a different end device or another switch? So this goes back to what I was saying during part 4, that we didn't, although we issued switch port as security MAC address and the MAC address of PC1, we didn't enable port security. That will come at this stage. So what we need to do is go back into the interface, and now switch port security. That will enable port security for fast Ethernet 0/2. So if we check, you should issue the following command to enable port security on fast Ethernet 0/2 switch port security. Now what happens if you disconnect PC1 and connect to a different device? That port will be shut. That port will be, not shut, will be put in the error disabled state. The port will discard traffic from the new device, and an unauthorized entry attempt will be logged, and the security violation counter will be incremented. So this is what happens if you disconnect PC1 from the fast Ethernet 0/2 port, connect a new device. The port will discard the traffic from the new device, log the unauthorized entry attempt, increment the security violation counter, and place the port into the error disabled state. Now, last question. On switch 1, verify the port security configuration by displaying port security settings for the fast Ethernet 0/2 port. So we just need to verify the port security configuration. What do? Go back to switch 1, and we need to do show port security. So, okay, that didn't work. That didn't work here. Let's go back. Verify the port security configuration. Right, okay, that's my fault. I didn't specify the interface. So what we need to show port security interface fast Ethernet 0/2. So interface fast Ethernet 0/2. I thought because I was already in the interface, I didn't have to specify it. However, it looks like I do need to do that. So right, okay, I have to come out of the interface, and then okay, so this is a bit of a learning curve for me. So what we need to do now is show port security. If I can get the spelling right, port security interface fast Ethernet 0/2. So now this will show us port security is enabled, port status secure up, violation mode shut down, aging type absolute, last source address 000C79882251, which was the MAC for PC1. So that's how we verify the port security status for fast Ethernet 0/2. So thank you everyone for watching this lab, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.